Well, the inquiry into the Public Investment Corporation continues tomorrow. Over the past week, the UDM's Bantu Holomisa was cross-examined. Now, Holomisa blew the whistle on dodgy investments at Africa's largest pension fund administrator, leading to the establishment of the inquiry in itself. So Heidi Giokos has been tracking the commission for us and joins us now for this conversation. Heidi, I can say that it's definitely been quite a moment for Bantu Holomisa having to be the whistleblower at the forefront of this. But what has been transpiring around issues around his cross-examination, which is to be anticipated as well?
Yes, so last week we saw Bantu Holomisa being cross-examined. This is the first time anybody's ever been cross-examined at the PIC inquiry, and the reason why this happened was because a couple of weeks ago Bantu Holomisa had testified at the inquiry implicating a number of companies and individuals, and specifically implicating Lebashe Investment Group. Now, Bantu Holomisa claims that that is a very dodgy investment that the PIC made into Lebashe, given its directors being the Deputy former Finance Minister Jabu Moleketi, as well as a former PIC staff member who have now become the directors of this company. So Holomisa is claiming that it is a conflict of interest, it's a dodgy investment, and it needs to be further investigated. But on the very same day that he implicated Lebashe, responded with a statement and said they would like to cross-examine Holomisa, which they applied so to the inquiry, and the inquiry granted that because the rule is that if you implicate somebody, that person is allowed to cross-examine you.
Is this true for the PIC inquiry, or is it true for all inquiries that are actually...
I'm not sure about the rules and the terms of reference for perhaps the Zondo Commission, but it almost seems as though it's more or less the same rule, because the minute you implicate someone, they have an opportunity to cross-examine you and almost a right of response, yes. So in this instance, Holomisa has implicated Lebashe on a number of allegations, and you must remember that this is not the first time that Holomisa has implicated Lebashe. Holomisa implicated Lebashe last year with this investment group then taking Holomisa to court, where the court interdicted Holomisa to stop with these allegations because he could not provide any evidence to support all these allegations that he made. And this is why this investment group has said, let's cross-examine you and get more into it and see where you are coming from. And he's saying that he actually doesn't have any evidence to support his allegations. He's just posing the questions to the inquiry because of the statements that have been made to him and these allegations that have been made aware to him as the UDM leader.
But now he sounds like he's a third party involved in this mess, not necessarily somebody that was actually witness to some of those allegations or implications leveled against the Lebashe investment, for example. If you're saying somebody came to me to tell me that Lebashe investment is actually involved in dodgy dealings, that says something about the receiver of the news in itself, and perhaps even discrediting at this point, which I would think that the UDM leader, given the fact that we're 23 days away from election season, does not necessarily want this kind of bad publicity on his front.
It's a very good point that you make, and there are two sides to it, because Holomisa is saying that all these allegations have come to him, they've been put on his table, and he felt the need to present it to the inquiry and pose these questions so that the inquiry can do its work, because he says he doesn't have the tools and the capacity to actually dig deeper, and he wants the inquiry to do so, and he doesn't have the evidence. And him saying that just because he poses the question doesn't necessarily mean he has the evidence to support it. But we spoke to the directors of Lebashe last week, Wednesday, after Holomisa's cross-examination on that day, and we asked them, why would Holomisa come for you? Like, why would Holomisa attack you and level all these allegations against you? And they personally believe that it's a political agenda, because it's very close to elections, and there are lots of political parties that are rising up. And
but then that would assume that Lebashe Investment has taken on a political stance if they're going to say that it's politically motivated.
Yes, so I mean, this is their stance that they're taking, because for me, if you have a UDM leader who has really been at the forefront of exposing or bringing to light a number of investments that has been happening at the PIC, writing to the President, urging the President to start up an inquiry and commission an inquiry into the PIC. Surely there is some substance in these allegations that have been put on his table. But Lebashe, of course, will obviously defend themselves, and they've said the reasoning behind all of this is because it's a political agenda, and Holomisa is trying to destroy the reputation and dignity of Lebashe. So I think the big question is, where's the evidence and when will it come? Will it come from Holomisa himself?
Who says that he does not necessarily have enough capacity to actually provide substantial evidence, hence why the inquiry in the first place?
Yes, or will the evidence actually come from the inquiry? Will the inquiry do its work and be able to actually dig a little bit deep? And this will also play to the fact that they have been given an extension. So perhaps the inquiry will have enough time to actually look into Lebashe. But we might actually get some answers, because they will be cross-examined, whether it's from Holomisa or the evidence leader of the inquiry, and maybe some questions will be answered from their own testimony and them bringing in the documents that the inquiry will need.
Well, this particular investment companies are certainly in the spotlight right now, but what do we know about them? So we're hearing the allegations that have been put forward by Bantu Holomisa, UDM leader. We're hearing and understanding that he does not have the capacity to actually provide the investigation. He's just saying, here's what's been brought to my table, investigate. If there's room or there's cause for concern, then you're doing your homework in it. But from a journalistic perspective, what do we actually know about this investment company? What my question really is are there grounds to actually suspect this particular company?
Well, you know the saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I think that's where Bantu Holomisa is basing his allegations on. And I'll explain to you why. Because you have a former Deputy Finance Minister, Jabu Moleketi, who was Finance Minister at one point. And then you have a former PIC staff member who used to work at the PIC. They gave a fund, a loan or funding to Lebashe Investment Group. We're not sure exactly how much, but there's a figure going around that it's about 25 million rand. That funding was given to Lebashe at the time that this PIC staff member was still at the PIC and Jabu Moleketi was still the Deputy Finance Minister of the country. And this is why Holomisa is saying there needs to be an investigation into that, because if you have these two individuals that were still at the PIC at the time and now have moved on straight after that funding was given to become directors of Lebashe, there needs to be questioning around how that happened, why that happened, and if that was even allowed in the first place. Because if you're the Deputy Finance Minister, you automatically become the chairperson of the PIC board, which makes executive decisions about the PIC. And then also you were a PIC staff member. I'm not sure what position he held, but and then straight after that you become directors of Lebashe, which is a company that the PIC funded. Even though the PIC has received its money back and Lebashe serviced that loan and paid back that loan.
It was what informed that decision and what kind of influence actually went into
exactly. It's all about the influence and why the decision was taken in the first place. Was the PIC supposed to, according to its mandate, according to its policy of funding into various companies, did it go according to that when one asked the question, why did it invest into Lebashe in the first place? So I think that's where Holomisa is trying to what he's trying to argue, and he's telling the Commission, you need to look at A, B, C, and you need to actually investigate. Maybe he's wrong. Maybe his allegations are unfounded and there is no evidence to support it. But
especially given the fact that the loan has actually been paid back and that money was not, well, from Lebashe perspective, money is actually not necessarily missing. We're not looking for money, we're just looking for a means of to an end. How was this money acquired, and why is it that the move from PIC to Lebashe investment, what informed that decision? But then it's going to bring me to my next question around what are the rules that inform, for the mere fact that a deputy minister stands as a chairperson of the PIC, that is already involving state-owned enterprises with the politics even, right? So it's a political head that's going into a state-owned enterprise. It's almost a private-public sector versus, politics in itself. One way or another, there's going to be conflict of interest.
Exactly, and it's a very good point that you raise, because this is what has been asked throughout the Commission of Inquiry about what kind of influence does the PIC chairperson of the board have, given the fact that he is the Deputy Finance Minister of the country. And that will obviously need to be looked in. But the Commission really has its work cut out for it, because they need to investigate a number of allegations. They need to investigate a number of policies that the PIC has implemented, whether the PIC stuck to those policies or not, and whether or not there's a politically exposed kind of policy to figure out, okay, this person is politically exposed, perhaps the PIC should not be investing in those kinds of companies. And it's not just Lebashe. I mean, you're looking at a number of different companies, such as SNS Refinery, where Nhlanhla son was heavily involved, and then he backed out at the last minute, but the PIC still invested into that company. And there it was politically exposed. The finance minister, he was finance minister at the time, deputy finance minister as well, and here is his son asking for an investment into his company. So that is something that the inquiry, I think, really needs to touch on, as to whether or not the deputy finance minister should be the chairperson of the board or not.
Well, it's a scary place to be in, especially look at the role of politics and business. Does politics play into business? And also, when we have the politics mixed up and meshed up in the business aspect of it, are we not compromising people? And should individuals, chairpersons, not be selected from the outside as opposed to within the political sphere in itself? So something that we're definitely anticipating, the cross-examination of the UDM leader, Bantu Holomisa. Heidi, thanks a lot for joining us this afternoon, really shedding some light in terms of what is happening with the PIC inquiry.